Hey Fly Tires, welcome back. My name is Matt, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Now, tonight's pattern is truly a Great Smoky Mountain original. This is number 22 in my series. This is called Pat's Nymph. Now, the creator of this fly was Pat Proffit, a legendary fly fisherman from Sevier County, Tennessee. That's eastern Tennessee, the Gatlinburg area, if you're not familiar with it. Now, I couldn't find a whole lot of information on Pat Proffit other than L.J. DeCure did mention him in Southeastern Flies. This book was published in 1980, and Don Kirk mentions it in his book. So I don't really know when this fly was created, but they called him legendary, so to me that means old. If any of you watching know Pat Proffit or know about when he created this fly, please leave us a comment. But this is a really cool looking fly. For as simple a pattern as it is and as effective as that can be, there's really only 3 components to it: some muskrat and then some brown and grizzly hackle. It is tied very heavy. It's meant to get deep. It's a great fly for a 2-nymph dual rig, maybe some contact nymphing or fishing under an indicator. I probably wouldn't fish this under a dry fly. It's just too heavy, but it's not intended to be in a dry dropper rig. It's intended to get deep, and it does that very well. Now, if you've never tied a Pat's Nymph, stick around. I'm going to right now. There it is, in the vise, Pat's Nymph. Now this guy can be tied as big as a size 6 and as small as a 16. I'm tying this on a size 10. This is a 1X long nymph hook. Let's get it in there a little straighter. That'll work right there. Now the first thing we're going to do is put our weight on it. I am going to use 015, which is a little bit thinner than I would put on a heavily weighted nymph, but I'll show you why. So we're going to help this weight make the taper. So lay down a base almost all the way up. Leave some room for the hackle and the head. Now, before you snip that off, just start taking some wraps back over it, and maybe about halfway back down. Go ahead and pinch that off. Get it situated. Okay, I think that's where I want. Now black thread, I'm using a 70 denier UTC. I'll put a dam in the back, put a dam up front, then put several wraps over it, maybe even build a little ramp in between those 2 levels, and then take the thread back to where we're going to tie in the tail. Now with this 2 layers of weight right there, you do end up using a bit more thread. Now for the tail, just take a few fibers of some brown and grizzly, mix them up. It's not real long, maybe a slight bit longer than a hook gap. So take a couple of wraps there, and I think that's going to be fine just right there. Go ahead and secure this in and snip off this excess. Okay, now time for the dubbing. Muskrat. Big, buggy, gray muskrat looks best on this thing. Now you could use synthetic, you could use rabbit, anything gray, but I think the original was muskrat, and it does give it quite a buggy look. So I just pulled some muskrat underfur off, pulled the guard hairs out, as many of them as I could, and I'll dub not a terribly thin noodle here, but fairly tight. And it might take 3 applications to get up here, because that's just how muskrat is. Great stuff, but it takes some working with. Okay, there's our body. Now it is pretty buggy. If you want to go ahead and pull these guard hairs out, you can. I haven't been worrying about it. If I leave a few of them, I leave them. So let's work on this hackle. You can use your dry fly hackle because we're only going to put a couple wraps, but if you've got some brown and grizzly, some soft hackle or some neck hackle that the fibers are the right length, yeah, go ahead and use that. You certainly don't need to use your expensive stuff for this. So catch that in right here and several wraps. I'm going to go ahead and snip off this excess. Can I get that close enough? Yeah, sure. Go ahead and we can, well, push that back with my finger right there and bury that. Okay, we got a couple of nubs there, but that's all right. We'll bury that in our head. And this is really, we're not putting many wraps. 1, maybe 1.5. So I tied the hackle in from the long side. That would be, I'm wrapping them both at the same time. I'm gonna go ahead and, so did you see what I did there? All right, I wrapped that grizzly and then followed behind with the brown. So I guess in a sense I did not really wrap them at the same time. So let's go ahead and snip this excess off. And for the most part, your next fly, you can just tie it right here. Use the same piece. And since we're only doing about 1, maybe 1.5 wraps, let's go ahead and pull these back right here, just like a soft hackle you would do. And then wrap that head back up, build your ramp so that these are going to be laying flat. You don't want it to have don't want it to look like a dry fly at all. We want these hackles to be swept back. And don't be afraid to build your head up if you need. So there we go. I think we got some room for the whip finish, and that's annoying, that little nub right there. But I can still get my tippet through there. It's not going to mess with the head, so I'm going to leave it. 4 or 5 turn right here. And a drop of head cement. Maybe a little bit of cleanup if you want. You really don't even have to. This is a buggy, scruffy fly, and that's one of the reasons it's so effective. So just really some head cement and put this in your box, and Pat's Nymph is done. So a super easy tie can be super effective almost anywhere. When you need something to get deep quick, a big buggy pattern, you know, this is one of the go-to flies of the Smoky Mountains. So that's all, folks. I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.